Hello and welcome. So during the Classic Studio lectures, we learned various basic concepts of machine learning and also created the experiments using the simple drag and drop interface of the studio. And now I am super excited to introduce the concepts required for DP100 or the Microsoft Certified Azure Data Scientist Associate exam. First, let's go to the official exam portal and see what Microsoft has to say about this exam. So, Microsoft calls this exam the Designing and Implementing a Data Science Solution on Azure. And after passing the exam, you will earn the Associate Badge of Microsoft Certified Azure Data Scientist. Let me just open this link in the new tab. And here you can view all the details related to the certification. And as it says here, it requires the knowledge of data science and machine learning, and the associate will use the Azure Machine Learning Service for that. Let me come back to the exam details. And if you come down a bit, you will see the section of skills measured along with the weightage in percentage. Now, this is very high level. So let me click on this download skill outline link. And as on date, this has been updated on the 8th of December 2020, which is pretty recent. Usually, the major changes happen twice in a year in December and in June. So as of now, you are pretty much updated. Let me scroll down a bit where the latest changes are highlighted in red. And there it is. And if you have been on this page, you will find it very difficult to understand what they are trying to say when they use the terms like workspace, data stores, compute context, designer pipelines, and many more. And as you go through each of these points, it could confuse you even more. At times, they sound very generic and sometimes very specific to Azure Machine Learning. So let me simplify this for you. So as you must have noticed, the Microsoft has divided the exam into 4 broad sections of setting up the Azure ML workspace, then running experiments and models, optimizing and managing these models, and then finally deploying these models into production. Now, these 4 sections are pretty much in line with how a typical data science and machine learning project is implemented. So, the first step of the business case and discovery is not dependent on any technology. But after that, we have steps such as data processing, model planning, model building and selection, and then finally deploying the model. Microsoft has very cleverly covered the entire life cycle with the DP100 exam. So in the first section of setting up the Azure ML workspace, we start with creating a workspace. And it is just that, the workspace, the space in the Azure cloud where all your data science projects can be created, run and deployed. So the Microsoft expects you to create the workspace as well as manage various objects such as datasets, experiments, and so on. Then we are also expected to be aware of and manage different types of machine configurations that we can use for our machine learning experiments. And once we have covered the setting up of the workspace, we get into the mode of running the experiment and training the models. So as part of it, Microsoft expects us to know how to create the models using the new Azure ML Designer, and also to run our training scripts in the workspace that we set up here, as well as generate various metrics for measurements and evaluating the model. We are also expected to automate the model training process. So by that, it simply means all the steps within a model, such as data input, data processing, algorithm training, testing, etc., should happen at the click of a button. We will also see a concept of pipelines, which are used here for automation. And as part of running these scripts, we will be learning the Azure Machine Learning SDK using Python. Then as part of optimizing the model, Azure has introduced a very revolutionary concept of automated machine learning. As part of AutoML, we simply bring in the data. Rest of the things, such as data processing, training on multiple algorithms, and choosing the model are managed by Azure Machine Learning Service. It's really a very interesting tool and we will go through it as part of this course. Then, the exam expects us to know how to tune the hyperparameter using another service called Hyperdrive. We have gone through the hyperparameter tuning while learning the Classic Studio. Conceptually, it is the same, but slightly different in implementation using the new service. And then, what is the use of any model if we cannot explain what it does, how it does, and why it does it? Well, that is what we are expected to know as a data scientist as part of the Model Explainer. And needless to say, we should be able to manage all the models that we have created and optimize till this particular step. Alright? And finally, once we are ready with the setup, with the right model, it is tuned and optimized, we then move on to the section of deployment and consuming the model. So while we were training and testing the model, we may do it on our local computer as well as some other smaller machine on the Azure cloud. But for production or making it live, we may need different computers or machines. And that is what this exam expects from us as part of this exam objective. Then we should also be able to deploy the model as a service on this production machine for live data as well as for the batch data. And not just the Azure Machine Learning SDK, but we should be able to do it using the Azure ML Designer. Great. And I hope now you can correlate and understand what each of these exam objectives are for. And let me assure you, I'm going to cover each of these objectives in detail. Not just these main sections, but every supporting exam requirement or the prerequisites such as Python, Pandas, Scikit-learn, Azure Fundamentals, or even statistics will be taught in dedicated crash courses as we go along. So let's get started with the first section and complete these objectives by first creating the Azure ML workspace and then learn the Azure ML Designer using the new studio, which you will find very similar and easy to learn. And you will find it easy considering you already know the classic studio interface. As always, it's a pleasure to teach you. Thanks for watching and all the best for your exam if it is scheduled in the near future. Have fun!